Hello, friends, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Happy Half Hour.
Throwback Thursday?
Throwback Thursday. We'll get to Throwback Thursday in a little bit. We'll talk about current Thursday.
Ooh, I like that. Let's live in the present.
Here's the cool thing about doing the Happy Hour. That's easy for you to say, Darin. You talk words for a living. What on earth? No, we're not editing that, Matt. We're just leaving that in. That's the authenticity that you only get here on the Happy Half Hour.
That's Darin.
That's me, not Kassidy. She's not the one who, never mind. Anyway.
He was about to make fun of me. I know it. I could feel it coming.
Yeah, and you were right. Your instincts were correct. It's Thursday. We got another game to look at. That's the cool thing about the Happy Half Hour going twice a week now. We can spend Mondays kind of rehashing the game before. Now everything's looking ahead. And frankly, that's probably for the best.
Exactly.
Because Arizona is generally a pretty good matchup, has been in the past. The Arizona game here last year was a chance for the Panthers to get themselves right after kind of an ugly Cowboys game the week before. And that really created a lot of that momentum going into the offseason that a lot of people were feeling. And, you know, it was interesting to me. One of the fascinating things to me about the football is the people who do the football. And we talk all the time, and you can get hung up in schemes and 12 personnel and all the minutia of football if you want. But I was talking to Bryce and Andy and those guys yesterday about the method of turning the page, the method of not letting Jacksonville drag you down or thinking about it too much. And Bryce talked about, you know, having that mentality of just turn the page, move on to the next thing. Taylor Moton, who is a reader of the Stoics, and, you know, as an old person, that's the kind of thing I admire. But Taylor's talked about that before, and he said, you know, Bryce kind of embodies that Stoic ideal. Taylor calls it one snap clear. It's like one play on to the next thing. And Timo says he'll like look up at the Jumbotron and see where he had his hands and make a correction in game, stuff like that. He said, but you just have to be on to the next thing and constantly on to the next thing. And if you're worrying about what happened a week ago, it's affecting what you're doing right now. And Bryce was good talking about that too, but I asked Andy about it. I said, what's that like? How does that work? Do you guys have a gavel you hit or something in the room? And he said, no, but once team meeting's over with, we go back to our quarterback meeting room. And he said, once you take that tape out and put the next tape in, I don't think they're putting tapes in.
I was about to say, I don't think they're physically putting in a VHS.
They've got a Betamax machine in the quarterback room, gang. You can go look that up on your internet when this is over. But once they change games and put the tape from Jacksonville behind them, Andy said the mood changes. You can see guys, all right, now we're on to the next thing, and that's a valuable life lesson in addition to a football lesson.
Exactly. You should always be on to the next thing. We saw it in the locker room yesterday, saw it at practice. There was some residual effects lingering over practice yesterday, but not in a downtrodden, resigned way, but more in a come out here and prove that's not going to be who we are sort of way.
Yeah, there was a little bit of J.C. Horn apt to start a fight kind of way.
Exactly. That's J.C.'s go-to. Canales even said, like, it got a little testy, and he's like, I don't mind telling y'all that. And he's like, I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And so
he really does, and that's one of the things, and we talked about this during the offseason. One of the cool things about this Carolina Panthers team as presently constructed is they've got a handful of those dudes who are apt to start a fight at any moment because they want to keep the standard high. It's not just out there, you know, bullying people or picking on somebody or instigating in that way. J.C. Horn, Chuba Hubbard, Derek Brown, these are guys who keep the standard at such a level that they're not going to put up with a lot of gas. And if you're not doing things right on the practice field, expect J.C. Horn to tell you that. If you're not pushing him to the level he wants to be pushed in practice and you happen to play offense, he going to tell you about that especially. So I like having a guy like JC who is, A, out there making plays on Sunday, and B, putting in the work to prepare himself, and C, holding everybody around him to that standard. So when J.C. Horn gets a little sassy and J.C. Horn's getting hot and wanting to go in practice on Wednesday, that's probably a pretty good sign.
The best one was when somebody did something that he did not like, and he was not involved in the play at all, and he literally ran across the field to let them know.
And that's his personality. I mean, during the summer, during OTAs, on days he wasn't practicing for whatever reason, load management, he would go stand behind the offense to observe and kind of see things from their perspective and learn about it that way, but also to instigate. Yeah,
he's such a little brother.
And I love that about JC. I mean, and frankly, the football team needs that, because you've got your Derek Browns, you've got your Chuba Hubbards, you've got your J.C. Horns. People who they have invested in are those kind of leaders. Mm-hmm. So when you do that, when you spend your money on those guys, it's kind of natural to take it and turn it and point it forward and keep it moving.
Exactly. And they'll need that this week. I mean, the Cardinals have two guys that are just both dynamic and do such different things, with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. And it's no secret tight ends have been kind of a kryptonite for this defense at times. They actually were able to hold Trey McBride in decent shape last year, or keep him from doing too much. Let's see. I think I have it here. Last season, in that overtime win,
look at you interneting.
Right?
We're waiting.
Yeah, they held McBride to 3 receptions for 20 yards last year. That's a 1,000-yard guy at tight end.
Yeah.
So to hold him to 3 receptions for 20 yards, there was a lot of talk this week about how much can you look back at that tape from last season of that December game to kind of pull from, because other than a couple of guys like Will Johnson, the rookie corner, couple of different other guys, the scheme and the personnel are largely the same with this Cardinals team.
Mm-hmm.
The same can be said for this Panthers team.
Right.
So, it sort of crosses each other out. But can they look at what they did? Can they look, and then Dave Canales even pointed out, looking at what the Cardinals did well against us, use that to kind of change what we need to. So, yeah, what worked well against Trey McBride last year, use that again this year if you can. Same thing with Marvin Harrison. I think he had a little bit more. He was held to 4 receptions on 8 targets for 39 yards last season in that game. So what worked well there, use that a little bit. It makes it somewhat easier when you're playing them this early in the season. Because, I mean, this is not a divisional opponent. It's not someone that you're necessarily, quote, unquote, familiar with. But you can go into week 2 having only one game of tape and at least knowing a little bit more background, a little bit more context and color, because you did play them so recently and played them well.
Yeah, no doubt. And I fully expected this year for Marvin Harrison to have a breakout year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there were some people who thought he was going to take off immediately. And as you talked about the other day with Teteroa McMillan, rookie receivers take a second a lot of times. Yeah. And when you look at what they're doing early on, Marvin Harrison Jr. is an alien. I remember standing at the Ohio State Pro Day in 23 when we went up there to see if C.J. Stroud was somebody this team might be interested in. And I was standing there with a little fella named Steve Smith.
Okay.
And we were watching the workout. We were watching the workout. We were watching everything going on during the Pro Day. And Steve just looked at me and he said, the best player in this building is not eligible to be drafted this year. And that was Marvin Jr. And that was Marvin Jr. So he is big. He can move. He's got range. I mean, very similar to T-Mac in a lot of ways in the stuff he can do. And I just think there's a lot of opportunity for him this year to make a lot of plays.
It's funny. Ohio State just pumps them wide receivers out like they're a factory, don't they?
They have had some success with that. Yes, that is a thing for sure.
Yeah, and he's definitely going to be one of them. I think last week versus the Saints, he had 5 receptions for 71 yards and a touchdown. That's a pretty good little day in the first week. So how do you keep him from going off again? How do you keep James Conner behind the line of scrimmage? That's obviously still going to be a point of contention, a point of focus, given that they did give up 200 yards last weekend on the ground versus the Jags.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of interesting this morning. Speaking of that, Ajero Vera and all the coordinators talk on Thursday mornings before we come in here to the studio. And EJ said something about the tackling. Dave Canales made a point that in practice on Wednesday when they were not in pads, EJ put the defensive guys through a series of very basic drills, like the stuff you see early in high school camps, early in college camps, that kind of stuff. where you're getting your feet square, you're wrapping, you're doing all those fundamental things that lead
back
to
to the
tackling,
basics,
even when you're not tackling. And I thought that was good. And he said something when he was talking to us this morning. He was like, the thing that I was encouraged about is the tackling was a lot better.
Yeah.
In the second half. Now, the big 71-yard rush is obviously problematic. And even without that rush, they were giving up 5.3 per carry in the first half. In the second half, that's down to a more normal 3.47 per carry. Not great, but still a lot better than where it was. And they were obviously intent on doing some things differently, and they kind of did a better job of keeping the Jags out of some of those big plays in the second half. But those fundamental things, those tackling things, are the kind of stuff that can get away from you in week one. You do your thing, you say your piece, you do the emphasis in practice, and then you move on. And let's see what it looks like this week.
And, buddy, are you going to need it this week? Because, I mean, spoiler alert, Kyler Murray's tough to bring down. I mean, he's somebody that, I talked to Princely Emmanuel and Nick Scorton this week, and they were talking about realizing the speed of the game, because you can tell it at that position so much more. And Princely was like, I didn't get a ton of one-on-ones, and he was like, but I could tell, like, that ball was coming out quick. Like, that ball was coming out so much quicker than I ever saw it come out in college. But then you face a guy this week with Kyler Murray where the ball might not come out as quick. He's willing to hold on to it, but that's because he's running around looking for another play downfield or scrambling. And Pat Jones told this great story yesterday. It'll probably be on 5 Things this weekend, but I'll give you a little preview. He tells this great story about the Vikings playing the Cardinals last year, and he gets behind the line. He's like, I have him. He's like, it's a sack. I have him. And then I look down and realize he's ducked under my arm, and he's 5 yards away.
That's right.
And he's like, that's Kyler Murray. That's what you have to do. You can't think you have him. You have to know. And so it's a fun little challenge.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And it's an interesting game because in a lot of ways these two teams are built similarly. They've got some things in common, but they've got a history, and that history, frankly, leans toward the Carolina Panthers. 13-5 all time against the Cards in the regular season.
Oh, I was counting it total.
6-2 at Arizona. So things tend to go pretty well for them out there, including, you mentioned Throwback Thursday. We were talking about this. We were talking about this at lunch earlier today. Perhaps my favorite Panthers-Cardinals game of all time.
Are you going NFC Championship?
No, I'm going 2007.
Wow.
The 2007 Panthers-Cardinals game was one of my favorites because, and I got to get a fat head of him, it brought Vinny Testaverde into our lives.
It's time for our Vinny Testaverde story. We haven't had one in a couple of months.
Yeah, we haven't had told a good Vinny story in a while, so we needed to. Vinny Testaverde came into our lives very accidentally in 2007.
As he usually does.
As one does. But Jake Delhomme elbow blows out early on in that season, leaving David Carr to back him up. David Carr came here in large part because Jake Delhomme was the most durable quarterback he had found, and after taking a beating for a couple years in Houston, he kind of wanted to get in and out of the rain. But he went to New Orleans the week before, suffered a compression fracture in his back. And I remember David Carr standing up telling us in the locker room after that game, he was like, guys, you can ask me pretty much anything you want. I'm so full of muscle relaxers and painkillers right now, I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah. So credit to David for having self-awareness in that moment, but they needed somebody to play quarterback the following week. So in comes 44-year-old Vinny Testaverde.
Wow, beats out Matt Prater.
And there was competition for his services at that point because – this is in the Kurt Warner era of Cardinals football, but they needed some help. They needed a backup with experience. Their backup was injured or unavailable or something. So the Cardinals were trying to sign him also. The Panthers had to have him at that moment because they needed somebody. And John Fox, as you may have heard, wasn't really into the whole young quarterback thing. So they called Vinny. At the time, the strength coach was a guy named Jerry Simmons, who had worked with Vinny back in Baltimore when he played for the Ravens. And Vinny's like, yeah, I'll come work with Jerry. Walks in on Tuesday night, practices on Wednesday, starts on Sunday. And it was like nothing had ever happened. I mean, he did a couple of things, and you'll probably see it this week. He had the deep ball to He had the deep ball to D'Angelo Williams for a long touchdown. The other impressive thing Vinny did that day was overthrow that Steve Smith guy.
Yeah.
Steve did not think he could be overthrown.
Right.
He was overthrown because Vinny, even at 44 years old, had a huge arm. I mean, he could fling it all over the yard. And as happens when you get into your mid-40s, it takes you a little bit longer to recover.
Yeah.
It was like that I'm as good once as I ever was.
Yeah.
He could throw with anybody in the league on Sunday. He just needed more recovery time.
Right.
So, like Sunday, Wednesday, those were kind of his throwing days.
Yeah.
Everything else, Vinny was kind of taking a mentorship role. But, it was good. I remember a lot of things about that trip, but Vinny Testaverde coming into our lives and immediately leading the Panthers to a win on the road in 2007. I mean, it's just nothing you ever expect.
No.
So it was beautiful. But yes, Vinny Testaverde, D'Angelo Williams, Steve Smith, all the good times, just as of course you would expect. He ended up playing against Tim Rattay because Kurt Warner got hurt during that game. So people thought it was going to be Kurt Warner, Jake Delhomme, the old NFL Europe teammates, doing their thing again.
Right.
Nope, it was Vinny Testaverde versus Tim Rattay, as expected.
Of course. That's what people bought the tickets for. I wonder what Vinny's up to nowadays.
Vinny's enjoying life, I'm sure. His son was playing some college football at some level. He's Vinny. The last time I talked to him, he was doing well. He was enjoying things. Just, I think retired quarterbacks are always in a good mood, but Vinny was particularly good because he's living the dream. Probably playing a lot of golf and probably lifting weights, honestly, because Vinny was very big into do your job the right way. So the conditioning part of it, I mean, he still worked out like a madman. I remember Jerry Simmons telling me that story. He's like, wait till you see him when he gets here because he takes such incredible care of himself. That's how he's able to do this now. But,
that's cool. That's a good lesson.
Yeah, it's a good lesson. So
anyone involved.
Looking forward to getting out to the desert this week. What else we got? Here's a tease for you. Speaking of things that are going to be on Panthers.com, we got J.J. Jansen copy coming your way.
Okay, always a delight.
That's right. We've got a very special. J.J.'s going back to Arizona. It's a very special occasion, a little confluence of events here. So you'll have that coming up on Panthers.com.
I didn't realize how many people on this team necessarily were from there. Lathan Ransom was saying yesterday that he's going to have a huge group there. Because it's close to home for him. He grew up in Tucson, about an hour and a half away. So he's going to have a lot of people. Also learned that Sunday was Lathan's first NFL game to attend.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Bryce Young told me yesterday that, being so close to Southern California there in Arizona, he's going to have a lot of family there, probably more than he's really had at a game before. So that's going to be exciting. And so,
you know what else we got to look forward to on Sunday?
What?
Halftime show.
Oh, that's right, Sugar Ray.
Sugar Ray, ladies and gentlemen.
Darin's so excited.
I mean, it's, he wasn't.
And that's not sarcastic. He's legitimately excited.
I love a good unironic halftime show. One of my favorites here was Biz Marquee, Rob Bass, R.I.P. Biz.
Rob Bass from Alabama.
And, they played here at Bank of America Stadium a couple years ago, but Sugar Ray, Mark McGrath's still out here doing his thing, and he's going to entertain us at halftime. So I look forward to that.
I was trying to explain to Darin earlier about Mark McGrath's cameos, and I feel like I'm going to have to show him to really get the full effect.
You know what? I think I'm good.
Should I?
A little bit of Sugar Ray goes a long way.
Vote in the comments. Should I buy Darin a Mark McGrath cameo?
Yeah, no. Maybe if you do, get him to introduce the happy half hour.
That's a great idea.
If you say, if we can get Mark McGrath to say, hey, when I'm looking for Carolina Panthers news and commentary, I only watch the happy half hour on the Panthers YouTube
We'll find
channel.
out.
I don't know if it's worth it. So until then, we'll get deeper into the Cardinals-Panthers game. We'll get you ready next week. We will see you back here next Monday on the happy half hour.